But
which is, I think, has to do with that we're very late in the day and just had this very important and lively discussion. But probably also with the subject, right? The subject of governance is not the most exciting. It is almost always underestimated. Truth is, it is deeply boring. This is not indeed spectacular, but very important. So there we go. What we agreed is that we're going to have a conversation whereby I ask a question and then you ask a question, right? You know. And I wanted simply to start. People have met me already yesterday, but can you tell something about yourself and about your work?
yes, sure. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm happy to stay here in the open Zakarpattia because that's my native land and it's particular pleasure for me and its development is of importance. I finished school in 1990, then I lived in Kiev. I dedicated a major part of my life to civil sector, but now I'm in the state sector. I had some political positions. I was the deputy minister for youth and sports, and since 2020 I have become the state secretary of the cabinet of ministers of Ukraine. And my work as that of the state secretary consists in ensuring what we started with. Something boring but important. Continuity of the decision making processes at the top governmental level, because the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers, of which I am the head, is the body that helps process all those decisions that are shaped up by different ministries in the form of policies. We analyze those policies, we prepare draft decisions of the Cabinet of Ministers, and then we provide for the release of those decisions, their monitoring, assessment, evaluation, which is a process that, from my point of view, is extremely relevant and important. And besides that, if we speak about good governance and integrity, so our mission is also to include civil society and citizens in the decision-making process. I'm the co-chair of a global initiative. I'm the co-chair in Ukraine. This is the Open Government Initiative, and for Ukraine, it's a rather innovative phenomena because that is the initiative that combines equal proportions of civil society and the state. And this is the initiative based on the co-creation principle. Co-creation of different ideas, initiatives, draft decisions, and co-implementation. And probably you've seen some state documents where they have action plans and there is responsibility on the part of the state, some executive authorities and ministries, and the responsibility on the part of the civil society. So this provides for the inclusion of citizens for the participatory decision-making process and its transparency, and this also enables us to jointly assess whether we are on the right track or not. Let me mention just some of the products of this open government, which are well known not just in Ukraine but throughout the world. This is Prozoro Sales. This is the system Dream, which we currently have. So these are the products which were born in this synergy between the state and non-state actors. And it seems to me that it's both about integrity and good governance. Я погоджуюся. А у вас до мене є запитання? Well, yes, sure, I do have questions for you, but since you work in deep immersion in this a little bit boring field, as you have mentioned, you still realize that this is a relatively new field, because it was only at the beginning of the 90s that at the European community the principles of good governance and public administration started being processed. And later they became important principles in the development, the OECD, and also at the current stage, for us, these principles are really relevant in the context of European integration, because we are going through the screening of the first chapter, fundamental, and we have had the state government public administration reform, which has become a part of this process. So this reform opens up and will close our negotiations process. And quite many transformations have occurred over that period of time. What is your feeling? Where is the whole system of public administration moving, the system of transparency and good governance?
When it comes to Ukraine, I've talked about this yesterday already. So as a philosopher, the first thing I would say is that you have done amazing things in a very short time. So to create decent government institutions usually takes generations and generations. And you have been doing this since 90. So 35 years. So that is always difficult to see from the inside, but looking from the outside, I would say the progress has been amazing. So if you look at the transparency side, open government, you are in certain aspects leading in the world. When it comes to digitalization, for example, my prediction will be that in 5 years from now, maybe 10, you will be better than the Netherlands. So there are many elements where you are really strong. If you look at the anti-corruption side and you look at what you have created on the national level based on criminal law, that is also very, very strong. So I would say, yes, this is moving fast. At the same time, it is also still true that if you look at what has been achieved on the level of transparency and on the level of anti-corruption based on criminal law, institutionally, and if you look at the reality of lack of efficiency, lack of effectivity, and also the presence still of systematic corruption, there is a kind of discrepancy between what you have already achieved institutionally and the reality of daily government work.
Well, this is debatable issue. Well, we'll probably have some reflection on what you've said. It's not only our evaluation, this is the evaluation of our external partners. Well, we really have strengthened our institutional capacities, and we have lots of different institutions. We have good legislation, and the colleagues who, for example, last year were evaluating the state administration reform said something interesting. Well, again, I'm talking about external evaluation, independent evaluation, so there is no subjectivity factor here. They said that the previous evaluation was from 2021 till 2023, and regarding the criteria, we have made some way forward regarding establishing our strategic documents, providing services, digitalization of services, and we already did some evaluation of the payment system of civil services, and now we have a more transparent tool based on grades. And again, the approach is changed from more subjective one in the past to more objective one regarding payments. But I will provide an example that will probably answer your question. And this is the example from my private life. My son, when he actually was in his last year in the kindergarten, there was a sort of professional orientation party when children are just reciting poems about different jobs, who they want to be. And my son came with a poem that sounded approximately like this. And I want to become a member of parliament in order to write laws and publish those laws. And if people do not want to hear me, I will just slap them on their ears. Whatever laws and institutions we are talking about, if we do not start from the kindergarten level, and it seems to me right now we try to focus on the young generation, on young people, on school children, or when we are talking about a big quality document which is the state anti-corruption program that actually brings together state actors, non-state actors, and there are also a number of other documents which are developed by state and non-state authorities. So we are talking about formation of a sort of a new culture. I do not think this is just specifics of the Ukrainian society to write a good law, but well, if people do not perceive it as something efficient, and if people do not apply it in their everyday life, this law will be good for nothing. So I will probably support smaller steps, but quality steps. When we strengthen new practices, when we strengthen new examples of good interaction, and when we talk about it, and our colleagues from one of the organizations, together with the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers and the Ministry of Culture, we organize a competition of best practices of interaction of the state, the civil society, and business. And we try to distribute this information. I do not want to generalize, but, well, our media somehow focus more on problematic issues and scandals, and I think this is the same about media all over the world. They try to focus more on negative things, but they do not often talk about good examples, the examples that may become good background or good platform for the formation of a new culture. Therefore, such initiatives as the Open Government and many others, the program I have just mentioned, actually lay out the new format of interaction between the state and the civil society. Yeah, absolutely.
That a lot of things have already been achieved. I have another question. So, if you think about civil servants on the top of government, right, in the ministries, in the last 30 years, how do you think has that been to be a civil servant on that level?
This is a challenge, probably a bigger challenge than in a number of Western countries, and the challenges are different. For example, if we are talking about the current government that came to power in 2020, and that was actually 1 week before the quarantine, and the decisions that were supposed to be made were very difficult. That was actually the beginning of the COVID epidemics. 2 years after, and we have the full-scale invasion. And generally, the war in Ukraine has been going on since 2014. We also have a number of challenges related to the reforms of different areas. And still, our primary question is definitely defeating our enemy, bringing back our territories, integration into the European institutions, and that requires lots of reforms. We also want to become members of the Euro-Atlantic institutions, and this is a challenge that probably cannot be tackled by everybody. And unfortunately, sometimes we have some prejudices towards those people who become civil servants. I'm talking about biases on the part of the society, because the society says that these people have come to power not just to serve people and to serve the state, but they pursue their own goals that are not related to integrity issues. And it seems to me this is something we have had in our past history, relatively recent history. Just imagine Ukraine was part of the empire, and the farther you are from the empire, the less trust you have. And well, this situation requires certain treatment, I would say. But on the other side, we have some modern examples, also not very pleasant. But still, we come back to the point that we have quite professional and quite quality anti-corruption institutions. We have societal organizations, we have NGOs, we have, for example, investigative journalists. And as a result, we come closer to the approach of zero tolerance when corrupt behavior is unacceptable and inappropriate, and when vice versa honest behavior will be welcomed. And again, we are talking about selection process. So it is a merit-based selection. So we choose people who understand how the institutions work and who would like to improve the functioning of those institutions. Now we are in the process of European integration. We talked to the European Commission about restoring the selection procedures that have been stopped for the moment of war, and I have already mentioned the reformation regarding payment and salaries. So our goal is to create transparent and good conditions for young people to be willing to work for the state. And I think we are successful in doing this. For example, if we take a look at the situation, we see that throughout the recent months, lots of ministries have advisory groups, the so-called youth groups, where we have young people. And it's important that such groups are established, but it is also important how many people are ready and willing to cooperate with the ministry and to become the participants of the change process. In my opinion, the number of such young people will be growing. And I think we should establish, we already have some internship programs for such young people, and later they become the civil servants. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. Я би сказав, все завжди непросто. But it's really important, and it is really a respectful process. And I see young people who are willing to work, who have this zeal in their eyes, who believe that they can change the country for the better, who are willing to become the participants of transformation processes. In our secretariat, we have quite a big unit, the Government Office of European and Euro-Atlantic Cooperation. And the employees of this unit are those young people who just recently graduated from the university, and now they are participants of the European negotiations. And they are very successful because they know that it depends on them how quick we are on the way to.
What are your biggest worries when it comes to this, I would call it, final stretch of the transition?
I do not think we have something more important and more concerning than our degenerative neighbor. For example, I have the alert signal. I live in Kiev, and for example, in Kiev, we may have up to 50 air raid alerts. And these are not just signals. Sometimes these air raid alerts become tragedies. And the closer to the front line, the more tragedies we have. And this is the greatest challenge we face. The challenge we all are facing. So first of all, we have to defeat the aggressor, and later we shall have to restore the country, to rebuild the country. And again, we shall need lots of people who will come to the state institutions, who will rebuild the state in the formerly occupied territories. These people will be working with the citizens and building new reality.
When you think about the rebuild, and to think about that has become a bit more difficult in the last year than it was before because of the war. But if you think about the rebuild, do you see a danger that what happened already once in the young Ukrainian history, that society, economy, and the state were captured by an oligarchic structure? Do you see the danger that in the rebuild, something like this could happen again?
I do not think that this danger is real. I have already mentioned the dream system that enables us to observe the situation. I'm talking about all the levels of the society, starting with the local one, and we will be able to see how the process of restoration are going on. And right now we are trying to introduce the elements of deliberative democracy, when the participants become the citizens become the active participants of changes, starting at the grassroots level. We cooperate closely with our colleagues from the Council of Europe, and within the initiatives I have mentioned, and within the Open Government Initiative, there is also a unit called Open Government Local, and with several communities, we get ready for our civil assemblies that will probably deal with the restoration of some communities. It is important for the citizens to have their decisive role and to have the decisive voice. Just an example, when I was in the Ministry of Youth and Sport, I visited a small town which practically is ruined by the Russian. It is Liman. It is in the border of Luhansk region, and we opened a youth center. And we were just talking to young people why they need this center. It will be a good, safe place for them to get together. We told them that it will be a good communication place in order to talk to the people in power, and also it will be good for the urban purposes. It was a small town, and this word urban was used, and I had association that usually it is about big megapolises. And the answer was of young people, we do not like the way our town looks like now, and we understand that such things will actually give us the possibility to change it for the better, and therefore we'll feel more comfortable here, and we would like to stay here. And it's also about tools. It's really important to include as many institutions, tools, and citizens into these restoration processes. We should show that this is not something abstract, but it's about the way this or that community will look like tomorrow. And again, we see destructions every day. We see the infrastructure which is destroyed, the schools, the hospitals, the kindergartens. But again, we see willingness and unity to restore this infrastructure where it is possible. I'm talking about certain communities which are a bit farther from the battlefield. And it is important not to lose this connection, not to lose this trust and interaction between the state, the local authorities, and the civil society. І я хотів би ще трошки
Ask a bit more about this because I completely understand your answer and I think it's a very good direction. But this is more like the kindergarten, the school, the sports center, the rebuilding of houses. Then we're looking at the great economic structures, the rebuilding of industry, the redevelopment of industry in every direction. Electricity, for example, energy. Now we're talking about big economic processes with big economic actors. Are you also not worried?
If we look what are the targets of the Russian attacks, and we saw it, for example, last year, they are trying to attack the energy infrastructure, particularly the major energy points that produce more electricity, more heat, and therefore now we are trying to decentralize this process. Today we have been talking about decentralization reform in general, and it is one of the most successful reforms in Ukraine. Pohoджусь. And still we have to take some more steps in order to fully complete this reform. But what's happening now, through certain tragic events and because of those attacks, people are left without any electricity or heating, it pushes us to the energy decentralization, smaller stations, smaller power stations, and I think that well, here in Zakarpattia, the situation is easier, though again, last year I know there were blackouts here as well. But I think that people, or at the level of households, are ready to do it. Somebody installs the solar panels, somebody installs the inverters or accumulators, and this is something that will protect us from the point you have mentioned. Well, this is a step towards energy independence at the level of each individual household.
Good. So basically, no worries when it comes to good governance.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm talking about concerns regarding our colleagues in the Western world. And definitely they help us a lot and support us a lot. And we understand that without this support of the democratic world, we won't be able to withstand in this war. But sometimes we feel that there are some expectations or doubts. Okay, are they able to withstand really? Or probably we should also communicate with the Russians in order to make sure that they won't go further. So what we lack sometimes is a very strong position or stance. And I understand this is not probably a point to you, but this is just a small reflection regarding what we have heard during this great forum. Ну, це не маленька рефлексія.
All right? We supported you on a level never seen since the Second World War. True. But it was absolutely not enough. So we failed you.
But we'll fight, we'll withstand.
I know, you're still fighting.
And I think that by joining our efforts and owing to the support you were talking about, will become part of the European community and will definitely move forward and will not only learn best practices, but will also teach best practices, how we can build good institutions and transparent institutions.
Right? And we could make a whole program of reforming the United States, following the example of the Ukraine.
Good idea. Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of our debates. I'm really grateful to you. This is something inspiring, and it enabled me to look at things from a different angle.
I'm grateful to you. It was a pleasure talking to you. And it was a great forum, right? So, thank you.